Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my review of the latest release from god-tier affordable watch brand Casio's god-tier JDM sub-brand Oceanus, the S400. Now, if you haven't sampled a Casio Oceanus yet, do yourself a favour, get your hands on one. They are some of the best value and best manufactured affordable watches you can buy. Full stop, end of. Does that mean that this is the best Oceanus so far? Stay tuned to find out. Now, you saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by buyee.jp, the Japanese proxy buying service. They gave me a voucher to cover some, but not all of the costs of one of these S400s. I will therefore, of course, leave a link to their service in the description of the video and a first-time user discount voucher for all of you as well. And to say thank you for the voucher they sent me, I'll spend the next 20 seconds or so telling you about how their service works. It's pretty straightforward actually. It allows you to shop as if you were in Japan. So you've got access to Yahoo, to Rakuten, to Mercari to help you sniff out the best deals on Japanese products. You find the item you want, they effectively buy it for you, it's shipped to them first, they inspect it to make sure it is what you actually want it before then shipping it on to you. I have bought a ton of stuff now using their service, not just new watches but also second-hand and hard to find stuff as well. There are both pros and cons to the service. The pros are the choice and the ability to find really good deals. The RRP on this 400 is 165,000 yen. I bought this one for 115,000 yen, getting nearly a third off the RRP therefore. The cons are, it's a bit of a process. It's not just a couple of clicks, plus the whole thing runs on Google Translate, so it's not always as simple as buying from a dedicated retailer would be. But if you're looking for a JDM watch or JDM anything really, it's definitely worth having a buyee account and having a look, even if you don't end up buying from there in the end. With all that being said, let's flip the camera and check out this S400. Alright, let's get into it and let's start by looking at the packaging, which is alright. It's the same packaging regardless of which Oceanus model, so the same whether you're buying the most expensive or the least expensive. This S400 sits somewhere in the middle. Now, I did quote the price in the intro, but I quoted the price in Japanese yen. Perhaps I ought to quote the price in US dollars. That might make a bit more sense for more people watching. So 115,000 yen is just under 800 US dollars. That's the price I paid. These are actually available from retail outlets now in the USA, but for the princely sum of 1,100 US dollars. So I saved 300 equivalent by buying it overseas than by buying it in the USA. Obviously, warranties may vary. Check with your local retailer. Now, like all of the Japanese brands, Oceanus just loves a hang tag full of information, and you just wait till you see the case pack today. Oceanus is from their Manta line, Bluetooth. Now, that is going to mean a lot to some people and not a lot to others. That's the model number down the bottom, S400 for short, and 165,000 yen RRP. And there it is. What do you think of that? Now, my studio lights here today are playing a bit of a trick. It almost looks black under this light, but if I angle it slightly, there you go. It is most definitely the green one. They do 3 of these. They do a blue, they do a black, they do a green. I went for the green again, just like I did when I picked up a T200 a couple of years ago. Where is the crystal? Where is the glass? You can barely see it. These have, I promise you, the best sapphire crystal I have encountered. It's just incredible how they get clarity, how much anti-reflective treatment they must pour over both sides of the crystal perhaps. It's stunning. Plus, I'm sure you've already noticed, a sapphire bezel insert also in glorious green today. Honestly, I'm not joking. I cannot stress enough just how good these watches really are. That's why every time I review them, I encourage you to get your hands on one yourself. All right, let's do dimensions before we get into this one any further. Here are the dimensions from the Casio USA website, and they are always, but always confusing. So looking at these, you're expecting a lug to lug of 46.5, a thickness of 9.2, and a diameter dimension of 41.3. Now, every single listing for every single Oceanus watch that I have ever seen seems to take a different diameter dimension, a different width dimension. Casio seemed to get their 41.3 measuring from that wingtip to this wingtip, not including the crown. I don't think that's representative. It doesn't look or feel or wear like a 41 plus. My measurement, and this is the one I think you should hold on to, is this diameter diagonal. I measured that at 39.3, and that is the figure that I'm going to put on the board today. That's the figure that I think you should keep in your head today. Thickness, I measure it slightly thicker than they do. I measure it at 9.6 mil. Lug to lug though, we do match there, 46.5. 20 mil between the lugs. There's a bit of a taper down to 17, back up to 19 at the clasp. As size for me, I removed 2 full-size links. So if you have a wrist much bigger than 7.5 inches, you might struggle to get this one to fit you. As size for me, it weighs in at 74 grams. If you haven't already guessed, it's made of titanium. 100 meters of water resistance from a push-pull crown, and the module in the back of this one is a Casio 5728. Now, I did have a bit of a chuckle at the case pack earlier on. Let me assure you, I'm laughing with them, not at them. I love these Casio case packs. They just pump them full of information. Not only do we have the brand name, the sub-brand name, the sub-brand logo, but we have just about every single specification that this watch has to offer. Interestingly enough though, it's just a press-on case pack. It's not a screw-on case pack, just a press-on. All of them seem to adopt this same style. Doesn't matter, it still has 10 bar of water resistance despite it. And one other thing you should note, because it's a Japanese line, they're all made in Japan. And very, very well made in Japan. We've already seen the Invisi crystal, just incredible, and that lovely sapphire bezel insert. Have a look at the case finish. Zaratsu polish, Zaratsu finishing here. And don't forget, it's titanium. Titanium is much harder to work with than stainless steel, and yet have a look at the standard of finish that Casio has managed on what is still an affordable watch. There's a lot going on here though. You've got a polygonal bezel, you've got multiple facets, those wings on either side, and a multi-faceted bracelet as well, raised in the center, multiple finishes here. Pin and collar system, by the way, the Japanese love a pin and collar system. Casio are no exception. And the clasp, we're going to be circling back to this clasp a little bit later on. It's just pressed, made of titanium, Oceanus on there. It does have one trick up its sleeve though. It is adjustable. No micro adjust holes you see here, but you squeeze those in and yeah, you get a couple of mil either way. But I tend to wear lighter watches loose. There is a half link supplied as well. I've actually utilized it here. I've got it squeezed in between those 2 full-size links. I tend to wear this style of watch loose below the knuckle. I guess that's going to be preferred because there isn't an awful lot of individual adjustment, just that one option of only a couple of mil. Let's do the dial on hands then, and I'll chuck in a little bit of macro here and there as appropriate. By the way, Omega, take note, this is how you do a wave dial subtly. There's actually a kind of double layer wave here effect, which comes and goes. Again, it kind of disappears when you expose this one to light. Now, this is a solar movement. Perhaps you read that from the spec sheet on the back. And I must say, Casio, like Citizen, hide their photovoltaic cells very, very well indeed. I've always thought that with Seikos, you can see their solar watches. You can see the cells under the dials. Not so in this case at all. And I love these indices, applied frame around the date complication there at the 3 o'clock. It's kind of color matched. It's actually a black date wheel with white printing on top, nicely legible, and the indices are far more complicated than they look from arm's length, as this macro I'm sure demonstrates. The Oceanus logo is applied in signature blue, the sub-brand then brand both printed above the pinion, and tough movement printed beneath the pinion above the index at 6. Yeah, that one will be in the moans and niggles section later on. There's also a little bit of further printing between the indices at 6 and 8. They're connected to the movement operation. I'll show you that in just a second or two. And that glorious green sapphire bezel insert today has the world cities printed underneath it. Handsets, very simple, high polished silver beveled swords with a very thin needle. Second hand, no lume on that one, but there is lume everywhere else today. And pretty good lume at that as well. Casio use their own proprietary lume Neo Bright. I've seen it across plenty of their models. This is the first one I've ever seen using bi-coloured Neo Bright. So we've got greenish blue hue to the hands, whereas a deeper blue to those indices, as you'll see when I turn the speed up. No lume on the second hand as noted, so you only have the two main hands, but by the end of my test, which I always think is about 4 to 5 hours of human eye equivalent, everything's still pretty legible. This one definitely gets you right through the night therefore. So what does the movement do then? Well, I guess it does as much or as little as you want it to. Yes, this has got multiband 6, it connects to the atomic clock if you get that in your area. Yes, it's got Bluetooth, you can hook it up to an app on your phone as I'll show you in just a minute. If you can't be bothered with any of that stuff, you can just pull the crown out to the second position, you can set the watch as normal. Once you've got the time and date sorted, push the crown in, the watch will tick away quite happily as an unconnected quartz timepiece, plus or minus 15 seconds per month, 5 months of charge when the solar cell fully charges the battery. It's got a low battery indicator, it'll tick every 2 seconds, plus it has a battery saving feature where after 10 at night and before 6 a.m. every morning, the hands will come to rest at midday, saving you some of that charge that you've built up. However, it does have the atomic clock signal capability if you live in that zone, and for me, it has Bluetooth, so I have connected this one to the app. Alright, so Casio did away with their separate G-Shock and Oceanus apps at the beginning of last year. You now have one master Casio watches app that controls all watches from all of their ranges. I've already inputted this one into my own personal page when it arrived a couple of weeks ago. There we are, OCW S400. It even knows that I've got the green one. No connection, it says there. Let's connect the two watches then and let's see if it automatically readjusts back to Sydney time. Hold that down for a couple of seconds. It points to C for connection and there we go. It connects the watch. There isn't a huge amount, as you can see there we are, it's going back to Sydney time then. It has automatically updated using the Bluetooth feature. There aren't a lot of features on this one because it's a simple three-hander. Some of the chronos were a bit more reliant on the app. This one, really, you're just relying on it to sync back and forth. There are a couple of other features. There's manual hand adjustment. There's a phone finder. If I hold this button down and keep holding this button down, I believe the phone should start playing jazz at some point. Oh, there we go. And there we go. It took a couple of seconds, but how very Japanese. It plays jazz to let you know where your phone is. So yeah, we are. If this is your everyday watch and you keep losing your phone down the back of the sofa, perhaps that will help you. Apart from that, you can manually adjust the hands if it's taken a knock. As I said, really, time synchronization is the key feature of the Bluetooth app on the S400. On wrist, well, I really like how this style of watch wears, but then again, I would do because my current daily is a Japanese quartz made of titanium. 75 grams, you know, some people are into lightweight watches, some people are not. That's fair enough. If you're not into titanium, you've probably long since clocked off, but yeah, super comfy. Now, it does have male end links, which push out the lug to lug towards 50, but because of the downturn, because of where that first articulation point is, it doesn't wear like a 50, it wears like a 46.5. So at least that one dimension is true to the specifications that Casio provide. I don't think it wears like a 41.3. I'm saying it's a 39 point something. It certainly wears like a sub 40. It looks like a sub 40 as well. I'll bring in a couple of 40mm watches to prove my point in just a second. Super comfy though, albeit with only one adjustment possibility from the strap. And you really need to take it off to double press both of those triggers to then put it back on. So it's not exactly something you can do while the watch is still on your wrist. But like I said, sub 75, I've got no problems wearing this one loose below the knuckle. Overhead legibility is actually really pretty good. Silver hands against that deep, lustrous green dial. Pretty much visible from all angles, especially when the crystal is so crystal clear. Kind of decent size indices here as well, definitely help. Moans and niggles though. I've been talking this one up for 10 minutes straight. It's time to bring it down a peg or two. Tough movement. Really? I don't need to know that. Nice that it is tough, but certainly I don't need to have it printed on the dial. I know that is a turn off for a lot of people. And it's definitely quite blingy, this one. Not as blingy as the ones with the multicolored rainbow crystals in it, but yeah, there's a lot going on here, particularly with that sapphire World Cities bezel insert and all of the angles on the case, the polygonal bezel, and a rather complex bracelet. That's not going to be to everyone's taste either. And the clasp, oh yeah, they could definitely have done something a little more luxurious there. It's actually alright with that one step of micro adjustment, but it does feel cheap and tinny, and it feels cheap and tinny every time you put the watch on or off. Now, if you weren't already aware, I am thoroughly into high quality Japanese quartz. Personally, I picked up the Chronomaster in 2022 and the Grand Seiko 9F GMT earlier on this year. These are both 4020s. The Oceanus definitely a little bit smaller, noticeably a little bit smaller than either of them. The Citizen is also made of titanium, but the Oceanus is noticeably lighter even than it. And then there's the price. I got a chunk off the RRP, but I still paid $800 for this one, which is double the price of the S100. Now the S100 doesn't have Bluetooth, it doesn't have the fancy sapphire bezel insert, or the fancy multifaceted case and bracelet, but it is made of titanium and it does have that fabulous sapphire crystal. I'm struggling to see where the S400 commands double the money. So the S400, awesome watch. If you like what you see here today, if you've fallen in love with that beautiful sapphire bezel insert and you've got $800 burning a hole in your pocket, go for it. You will not be disappointed. However, if you just want a lightweight, accurate titanium Japanese quartz watch to wear as a daily, check out the S100. It does 95% of what this watch does for 50% of the cost. So there you have it. It is great to see Casio expanding the three-handed Oceanus line. This S400 is definitely going to be more suitable than the S100 if you've got bigger wrists and if you like a bit more bling on your bigger wrists. But is it worth twice the price of the S100? Probably not. Here's hoping that the price on this one drops by another couple of $100, to be honest, in the future. Well done for making it all the way to the back end of the video. While you're here, you should really check out my full review of the S100 and my comparison between it and the T200. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again in the next one.